stuck in there somewhere in the game of professional football. We're going to talk a little bit more detail about that. Some of you may know what that's all about with the two players that were involved, Aqib Talib, and I call him Mr. Crabtree because he's always asking for that respect. Well, I don't know if he deserves it or not based on the behavior he exemplified with Aqib Talib and Mr. Crabtree during the Oakland Broncos game a few weeks back. And since that time, the Broncos haven't seemed to capture anything more about how to control their emotions. And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily they're negative emotions. We've got athletes, elite athletes, high-performance individuals all over the world that controlling their emotions sometimes just amp it down a little bit. In the military, paramilitary people, special forces people, they have a saying that if I'm up too high, people will die. If I get too low, I need to grow. And what that means is they actually learn how to monitor their heart rate. And so that their heart rate gets up to 140 beats a minute before they're going to bust a door and go in, pulling the trigger and doing the 10 ripple routine with anything that's in front of them. If it's too high, if it's above 140 and gets into that 160 range, the cognitive powers, the ability to judge, respond effectively into the targets that might be in front of them isn't very accurate and can get a little bit crazy, So we want to make sure that we also talk about emotions and managing the passion emotion, not just the negative side, not just the angry side, but the other side of the emotional curve. The angry part of our show today, angry versus passion, and in essence, managing both sets of emotions. When we control the path of our movement of controlling our emotions with some positivity, that's also essential and important. Now, I'm going to refresh our memory about the NFL's response. Jon Runyan. Last week's show, we talked about measuring up and how did Jon Runyan and the NFL measure up. Well, they did a pretty good job because Jon made some very clear statements based in fact, even though he's the person at the executive level within the NFL. He's the VP of football operations for the NFL. It's his job to make the statements on this, and he made a public statement, and it was not personal. He didn't make a personal statement to the effect of, oh my God, that Aqib Talib, he's such a blah, 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 or that Crabtree guy, those two guys need to get in control of themselves. He didn't emotionalize it at all or make it personal. He just stated the rules, that they're flagrant violations of the discipline that they expect in the game of football, the professional game of football. So I at the time when we talked about measuring up, I said Jon Runyan was right on it, man. He was the guy that really put some great thoughts to that altercation, and he said those actions are an injury to the game. You don't respect the game, and that was obvious by their behavior, and also that it was all about them. All about them. Aqib Talib, he knew how to get after Crabtree. He pulled his chain off. And because Aqib Talib thought that Crabtree had punched one of his teammates, had punched Harris, whether that was true or not, I think there's some evidence, allegedly, but there seems to be some evidence that might be the case. But it's still an alleged gesture, and why do it? The success is the best revenge. Be successful, Aqib. Go out and stop Crabtree. That's how you pay him back. Don't disrespect the game that you say you love. Get after it. Well, these are examples of where the difference between anger and passion raise their heads in and on the field of play. Well, here's some other examples that aren't necessarily player-related. How many of you remember Woody Hayes? Ohio State football's head coach for years and very successful. But there were incidences towards the end of Woody's career where he actually punched and pushed a player from an opposing team running down the field. That was an example of perhaps his passion going a little over the line and dipping into that anger, frustration area of the mind where he didn't quite control it and keep it in play the way it should. So that was Woody Hayes back in the day when the Ohio State Buckeyes, well, they're still pretty dominant, but back in those days, they were really, really dominant. year after year with Woody Hayes at the helm. Another one in basketball, college basketball fields, Bobby Knight. How many of you remember the chair throwing incident across the court? And in that particular instance, I believe if I'm not mistaken, he was upset with the officiating. His rage was not directed at players or his players' performance. It was directed at officials. And in Bobby Knight's opinion, probably the lack of officiating. And he picked up a chair and chucked it across the gym floor. And it was beneficial to the game and to Bobby Knight that he didn't hit somebody. But that was also a show of where his passion may have gotten out of control. There's no question that Bobby Knight, as well as Woody Hayes, love the game of football, love the game of basketball, and have done many, many great things in their careers to promote the game, promote the players that play it, and the institutions they represented. But regretfully, that one incident is so overwhelming to the fans' vision that it distracts and diminishes everything you might have done to that point as a positive. So as you look over my shoulder again at the incident behind me that Aqib Talib is doing and Crabtree, just notice the emotion and the movement in that and project that to any event you've ever gone to and say to yourself, gosh, would I want to have that happening around me at an event that I'm going to try to enjoy watching my kids or my grandkids or my nieces and family members perhaps play? Or maybe it's just to love the game for yourself. And you're going to watch the game for you. And it gets diminished. The quality of that game gets diminished because of the behaviors of others. Now, what I've described to you is mindset. The mindset of players, coaches, fans, participants at those events that are helping manage and run the event. The concession stands people, the people in the stands, the ushers, the guards, everybody that's there is participating in the game in some way. And every one of those people, because of those incidences and those behaviors, that experience is diminished for them, which is regretful, very regretful. So how does that, one of the questions I have for myself, and I asked myself about this regarding this aggressive, violent behavior in our show's theme today about anger versus passion. I can only label it with anger. Anger seems to be the thing that seems to be the eventual outcome of emotions when those things happen. But we can also say maybe the mindset was created because you're frustrated. You're having a bad day, or the team is having a bad season. Even though the defense for the Broncos has been doing okay, not great, not what they've done in the past, but they have been doing quite well, keeping the offense in the game. And maybe it's been going on too long, and you as a player says, enough's enough. I'm frustrated. I'm doing my best. We're keeping the game in control so we can have a chance to win, but offense just isn't delivering. And me as a defensive player, we're out there, we're making it happen. Well, great, then continue making it happen. Don't let that set of circumstances around you adjust and change your mindset from what makes you great. Stay focused in the now and maintain a mindset that's backed up by what you know is the right thing to do. Well, and taking swings at somebody with a helmet on isn't necessarily the right thing to do, nor is it the right thing to do to get yourself in that situation. And so that to me is difficult to look at and understand. How does a pro get themselves in that mindset? And my only explanation for it, not that I need to defend either of those guys, they're indefensible right now, is that maybe there's other things going on off the field that cause that kind of mindset to get stuck in their heads and that level of frustration to push them out of control of their emotions. Well, that being said, I always like to match a positive with a negative. And the negative is diminishing as time goes on. It will be forgotten, hopefully never repeated. Good luck with that, right? It may get repeated. It gets repeated over and over again across all sports and all competitive stuff. Have you watched NASCAR every once in a while, where a guy goes into the pits or gets spun out, and the guy that spins him out, he's also on the side in the grass, and they pop out of their cars and rip their helmets off, and they start going at each other, pounding chest. I mean, literally bumping chest with one another. So it happens regardless of the sport, when the frustration of your actions, perhaps, or the lack of mental toughness is there, and at a level that you are overwhelmed by the emotions of the moment and the environment that it creates. Well, even though that's true, there's also positives. Like, for example, the NFL every year, and this year the recognition of these nominees, the 32 nominees for the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year Award, will be presented in February, on February 3rd. And I believe it's going to be on the eve of Super Bowl on NBC. And let's see, it's at the Cyrus Northrop Memorial Auditorium at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. That's where it'll be. It will be a delayed tape broadcast, but that's when the announcement will be made for the winner of the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year. For Broncos fans, the individual that has been nominated from the Broncos is Chris Harris Jr. I've had an opportunity to talk to Chris over the years, and I know that he's a family man. He loves his kids, loves his family, both immediate as well as extended family. As we get closer and closer to that event, I will have some information for you about Chris's work in the community and how giving and charitable he is, and how deserving he may be for the Man of the Year award for the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year. Now that's good stuff. And let me just tell you a little bit more about the good stuff that award represents, because of having the opportunity to have met Walter Payton, had physical contact with Walter Payton. I don't know if you know this, but Walter was passionate. He was the man who's the epitome in the NFL of passion about his sport. Passionate, evidence of passion for Walter Payton was watching him train, watching him run up sand dunes, and sprint, literally, not just run, but sprint up sand dunes, and then jog back down and do it again over and over and over again. His endurance and flexibility, I most certainly was enhanced by that activity. Well, that example of his passion was not the only place where it came out. It came out in his being a prankster in the locker room. It came out, if you have to be careful. If you were a new person never being seen at Hallis Hall and at the practice facilities around in the summertime, and Walter didn't know you yet, and you were new, and he knew by the fact that you had access to the locker room and the areas of the buildings that somebody must know you, right? So he had this initiation, and I was a recipient of that initiation one time. His hands were so strong. I mean, the pads of his hands were huge, and he had really, really strong hands. So if he pinched you, you knew it. And that was his way of kind of getting to know you, and also sharing who he was to you. So if you didn't accept it very quickly when you first arrived and you were initiated by Walter Payton, it pretty much set up your relationship with him. Well, I responded in kind when he initiated me with his pinching of my backside in a way that made him feel good. You know, a little yelp, and then going, "What? Where did that come from?" Because he'd like to do it kind of like from the side. You're walking down past the benches in the locker room, and he'd pop out from between lockers and get you. Or he'd like to do it when you're getting interviewed by somebody. Not that I was there getting interviewed. I was usually the interviewer. But if he had teammates who were being interviewed, he'd play pranks on them. The bottom line is his actions spoke to his passion. I don't see that in the behavior of Crabtree and Aqib Talib. Their actions do not speak to their passion. Their behavior outside of that event and that behavior does not also speak to their passion for the game or for everybody else. That doesn't diminish the fact that they're great athletes and they've proven themselves off the field. But the issue for a champion and a championship contribution to a team is that you're consistent. Your behavior on and off the field is consistent. And that's the bridge of identifying the difference between angry behavior and delivering your passion in your performance. It's consistency, time in and time out. That's the mindset you want to walk away with. And that's the last point I want to make about mindset for our first segment here at 360 Performance Talk on KUHSdenver.com. It's a great day. I know that it's going to be a little overcast today. We've had some great weather, but it's Colorado. And what does that mean? It means just wait, it'll change. Like it will any place. But we're always surprised in Colorado as to the change. But we can count on the statistics because we have over 300 days on average of sunshine, so I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Now, before I end up the mindset session, I want to point out that the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, I'm going to make a pick. I'm going to make a pick, and you can tell me I'm right or I'm wrong, and hopefully right when the nomination comes out. I mean, when the award is given out, and I'm going to predict that the award for the Walter Payton Man of the Year for 2017 is going to be J.J. Watts from the Houston Texans. Do you think that's a pretty good play? Should we make a bet on that? I'll bet you a nickel that it's J.J. Watt. Taking nothing away from the other 31 nominees, but you know what I'm talking about. If you've watched anything about what's happened with our weather and how it's hit the state of Texas, and in particular the city of Houston, you know what J.J. Watt did. And here's the check on the passion with that. The man thought he could maybe raise $200,000. My gosh, he's pushing close to 30 million. 30 million. To the point where it's not just in the moment where he's bringing food to Houston. He's now got an opportunity, because of those contributions, to bring, fix housing, get people back in their homes, clean up their neighborhoods from the debris and all the stuff that's gone forward from the hurricane. That is where the passion shows up in the mindset on our theme of anger versus passion and how it shows up in your performance. Well, that was our first segment on mindset. We're going to be moving right into the skills segment here in a minute. But I want to make sure that you understand what's going to happen today. Today's going to be a first this afternoon. We're going to expand our footprint a little bit with 360 Mindset. 360 Mindset with myself as the host. We're going to start a new segment here at KUHS Denver this afternoon at 3 o'clock. I hope you can tune in. It's called Measure Up. We're looking at the power and privilege issues facing all genders, and how that may influence how you're treated by others, and why is it that's happening? Why are there so many incidences being highlighted now where a man has accosted a woman, and that approach has resulted in something more than just casual conversation or a agreed upon hug from someone? It's turned into abusive behavior that one might call assault or harassment. Well, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to flesh that out and give you some insights that can educate you on ways to manage your interactions with the other gender, understand the signs of environments that you might want to stay away from or at least be aware of in doing. That's why we call it Measure Up. Measuring up, learning what you need to learn about yourself and others, and that interaction you're going to have with that opposite sex, or maybe same sex, because harassment and abusive behaviors are not necessarily man versus woman, or woman versus man, or man or woman. It's an issue about power and privilege, about your opinion of yourself and how you project that out to others. We're going to talk about that today at 3 on KUHSdenver.com, hosted by myself, that'd be Lowell Whiteman, on Measure Up. So that's at 3 o'clock today, and hopefully every Friday. I'm hoping, based on what we've seen so far, it's got some interest. So keep telling us what you think, especially today on 360 Performance Talk, about what you think about anger versus passion. And our next segment is about skill, and the skill of managing that, and making sure that when you're faced with circumstances that kind of surprise you, that you have the tools, the skills, and the tools to move forward in a positive way so that you can adapt and adjust. Not like Mr. Talib did or Mr. Crabtree did. You can protect your teammates in different ways than going out and pulling the guy's chain off. That's like middle school action. I mean, big deal. The guy wears a gold chain and pounds his chest about it. Leave it alone. Go out there and guard him. Like I said, success is the sweetest way to get revenge is through success. success is the best revenge. So go out there and beat him. Well, now you're suspended for 2 games. You're not going to beat anybody with a suspension. And then you're going to be scrutinized even more if you even get back in the game. I'm not so sure that Roby should come out. Roby's been doing a great job. What he says he does on the field as a corner, as a player who can get the job done. I think Mr. Talib should be cautious about what he says and what he does and make sure that he just delivers after he says what he says. So we're in the skill set. The first thing I want to talk to you about regarding skills is really anchor yourself into the positive. If you're having a tough time, my rule of 3 to 1. 3 to 1. You got one negative, one thing that's in front of you. Find 3 things that are positive to help you prepare for that challenge. Typically going into playoff season, as we're getting closer and closer to that, you're going to need some strategy on how to manage those emotions that are swelling up. Because remember, if you're passionate for the game and you're feeling pretty good about yourself, it's not just the negative emotions that you want to prepare for. There's also being too energized, too amped up to get ready for a game or a contest or a big board meeting, or maybe you're going to go public and you're getting yourself prepared and you want to make sure that the message is tight so that you sell a lot of stock. Well, keep it under control. Amping it down is not a bad thing. It might be amping it down because it's way too high. So passion can be something that gets out of control. You need to manage that as well. So the skills is start off with a positive thought about the mission you're going to go on. Get a good vision about what you want, and then apply that positive thinking process. One of the things I ask people to do, my CEO, or I should call them executive boardroom or executive office folks, is when they go into the meeting room that they're going to present, and you may be standing, but sit down for a minute and just get the perspective of the people in the room so that you understand how to project your energy and your passion out in the room. I also ask people to get connected with physical connection. Touch the table. Touch like I'm in the studio. I've been in the studio before, but every time I come in, I look around. I make sure that I'm familiar with what my surroundings are like because, Henry has a chance. He tends to change things. Add this, add that. He's never really satisfied with the placement of things in the office. So I have to make sure that everything's good. And that's a good thing to do, even though you've been in those places before. So it anchors you again. It sets you back into the place in a positive way. And then project from there, move forward from there about getting the vision. Imagine, okay, I'm in my chair, people are coming in, and then you stand up because you're going to present standing up. So get that feeling. You have, let's say, you may have a suit coat on, or a suit and tie, or maybe it's a jacket with an open collar. Get a feeling for, okay, this is what people are looking at. So check yourself out. Feel good about all of those things. And everybody has a different degree of these feelings, but so rise up to the level that you're comfortable with that, and make sure that you're creating a vision with those feelings in it. And with that, let me also remind you to breathe. As the song always said we play here is breathe and anchor yourself in that breathing. And I'll take something from the sales world here for the skill set. A pregnant pause is also very, very good to use in presenting. Take a breath, especially as you look at your script or you go through your notes and you add that breathing in there. The timing with when you breathe is important to staying really focused on a thought perhaps, or laying the emotions of a thought into the audience. Those are ways to deliver your passion for your performance, to optimize your results. And that's a skill. So we'll review real quick. It's that positive prep, get the positive thought going with your prep. Breathing techniques that fit into the timing. For those of you who've heard my sessions on breathing, it's breathe through the nose, in through the nose, and out through the mouth. And in many occasions, it's bring it fully in so that you bring it to the top. So you use the full capacity of your lungs to make sure that it's working beneficial to you. That's extremely, extremely helpful. And then that will help you with staying cognitively structured to the fit of your performance and your play. Now in athletics, same kind of process, but things move a little faster. So in your visioning, when you're setting your skills up to make sure that your anger doesn't get in control of you if you find something unexpected happens to you, and you're also maintaining a good handle of your passion. I call it my bubble. You know, I'm in a bubble. I've got this energy around me that I can because of my performance will project bigger or sharper or with more feeling to it. I truly believe in that you can create your own emotional bubble around yourself, and by practicing your prep with visioning and breathing, you get to another actual skill, which is you do a role play. I have whether it's a snowboarder or a skier, swimmer. I've got a swimmer. I've had swimmers as well, golfers. It works really well, where they actually go out and they'll put like a faux club. They don't have actually a club in their hand, but they're feeling their grip. They're closing their eyes. They're getting their arms in positions. Foul shooting, got a great drill for basketball players that we use the sensory deprivation that I talk about, remove the vision from it. And Michael Jordan used to do this where we'd shoot foul shots with our eyes closed. So we get the movement is consistent. Doing that, practicing with your eyes closed so you get really that just, without even thinking about it, movement that's consistent really helps to impact overcoming fatigue in key moments within a contest. With basketball, the key moment is if you knock down your foul shot, we'll win the game. There are some great statistics about the margin of win is very small in the college and professional basketball tournaments or competitive. You're going against a competitor. Maybe it's a division or league rival that you're going against, and those games are usually fairly tight. So it's down to foul shots. Those are free shots. Well, if you haven't practiced that consistency of motion by using your eyes closed, your body might not respond in the way it should to help you get that foul shot knocked down. The same thing with golfing. Another one is swimming. You know, because swimmers are in the water. A lot of their senses, their hearing goes away because they've got a cap on or it's the water. So regardless of the fans yelling or coaches yelling, they really don't hear a lot of those details. So swimming, it's truly feel it where my arm is, my elbow. I have a swimmer that has just a chronic positioning of the left arm, comes out straight versus crooked to pull more water under and really push yourself through. So it's a matter of that feel. So the role playing of that on the side of the pool and really thinking it through, getting your eyes closed and imagining that is hugely important to not only get execution of the right thing, but if the emotions overcome you, let's say, God forbid that you're on the side of the pool and the last thing you hear or you discuss before you go in is some teammate of yours saying, "Why'd you take my boyfriend from me?" Bad timing on her part. But it's a lot like the Aqib Talib pull the chain off and Crabtree goes nuts. You know, you never know what's going to happen or where people's heads are at. But trying to make sure that if that happens, you've prepared. You've gone through the vision. You know, take the visional things away. I've got my visionary practice down. Those preparations help you to work through the unexpected that might escalate your swing away from passion into an angered and upset point of view. So those are the skill tips for today regarding our topic, anger versus passion, and delivering that control for your optimized performance. Now, the next thing I want to share with you is something I've talked about before. And if you go to my website, 360mindset.com, and click on the RMP tab, the RMP is my assessment that I use to measure desire, measure human desires for performance, as well as other issues. But pretty much every action you take is an example of a performance. So the RMP helps us measure 16 factors, 16 components of who are you? What do you desire? Now, this is a well-done study tool. It's a question self-reporting survey method that's been studied for over 30 years. Now, that's important because it makes the data we gather legitimate, up to and beyond, in some cases, 80% probability of predicting certain behaviors. So this is a really legit study. Go to my website, 360mindset.com and push on the RMP tab. You can take the survey, get the data, get the report. Don't even have to talk to me. But if you go the next step and do the setup, or you want me to talk to you, you'll get a 30-minute consultation with me and a personalized individual report that focuses it in more on you than just the general report that you get. But in either case, the data is outstanding on how accurate it can be to giving you some insights on who you are as a person and answering this question. When you go into different settings, the data helps you understand more clearly, why are you there? When you make a choice to go to a meeting, do you ever ask yourself, why am I going to this meeting? Yeah, I know I got an agenda. I saw the agenda. I see what's on the agenda. But your participation in that event is rooted in the answer to that question. Why are you here? If you can't come up with a fairly specific and concrete answer, you may not want to go. Now, I know if you don't go, the boss or whoever called the meeting might say, hey, where's Lowell? Why isn't he here? Well, maybe then the person should ask, why did I want him there? Do I know him well enough to give him insights through the agenda items that says, oh, Lowell should be here. That's why I should be there. Or maybe even putting out a call to somebody. This is where the extension of your understanding of your passion and your desire for what you do will trickle into these kind of details, where when you call a meeting, you write an agenda that considers why people should be at the meeting. So that way, when you have those people there and they understand why they're supposed to be there, you're going to have a very enriched meeting that's on point, more than likely not a lot of wasted time or extraneous inputs from people trying to discover, why am I here? Why am I here again? I don't quite understand why I'm here. So that being said, that is what the RMP can do, is help you measure those skills and traits about what makes you great, so that you can understand very accurately, why am I here? What do I want to get out of this? It's what I call a WIFM. What's in it for me? A WIFM. So we're into our next segment, the mental conditioning segment. Mental conditioning considers both the mindset and the skill component, and then wraps that package of understanding with the environment. How is the environment influencing my behavior, my use of my skills, my mental state, the mindset that I create, and how I adjust and adapt to those settings? I would be interested. I've never met Woody Hayes, but I'd love to be able to ask him, so how did you change your behavior after you punched that kid? It was a player running down the sidelines, like it came out of nowhere, like being in a bar and getting cold cocked. That would not be fun. But that's Woody Hayes. That's who he was. Very huge competitor. So I would wonder, Woody, how did you come away from that? How did you change your mindset, get back in the game? I don't even remember if Ohio State won that game or not. In fact, it might have been against Michigan. But I've wanted to know, okay, then ask him, what did the environment have to do with it? Was that competitive game so powerful that it adjusted your control of your emotions, and that's why you went out of control? It would be interesting to have him comment on that. And in that, with that being said, the changes, how you handle change and how you recognize your change is important for you to be able to manage the upswell of emotion. I'll say upswell versus just categorizing it as anger. But it's an emotional change. It's not necessarily positive. It's some kind of negative feeling that pushes you emotionally to feel out of control. So how to manage change is a big part of how quickly your resolve is to get back into that positive place. And that's why I would like to ask Woody Hayes, how did you do that? How did you as a coach get back into that play? Because if he's exemplifying that, what kind of green light does that give players to be out of control, to kick things, throw things, be out of control? The minute when I'm on the sidelines at a football team or I'm sitting on the bench with basketball or baseball, I watch the behavior of an athlete coming back from an at-bat when they struck out or they flied out or whatever. They're out. And they come back to the dugout. What do? Do they slam the helmet into the cubby? Throw the bat into the bat plate? It's one of those big containers with openings in it they throw their bats into. did they show me that they're not quite controlling it? And it's not the very few people that I know of have an immediate capability of getting it under control, because in some cases that out of control nature is good to see from a coaching standpoint. That's energy. That's some of the passion coming out. Now, what I want to notice then and watch is, did they recover? Are they now starting to do things that I can witness that shows me they're recovering? And that's where the mental conditioning comes in. Because if they've been practicing mental conditioning, the mental toughness part and the resiliency components of their character come out in this area of mental conditioning. And that's their ability to handle change. And one of the things that you need to do is make sure that on your team bench, you know who you need to go to have yourself surrounded by people and the energy they create that's going to help you get back quickly. Now, as you watch the Broncos game against the Oakland Raiders in that incident, watch what happens with the people that come around it. Now, I'm not saying that Crabtree or Talib knew that the people that came rushing to them were people that were going to help them get out of it. But I want you to, if you're watching versus listening to me, watch what happens to the crowd. There's one very large football player for the Broncos that stands in the end zone with his arms out, as almost like he's a one person fence to keep people away from Talib. And whether Talib knew that or not, that person may have known something about Talib, that if I let any more people to him, whether it be a Bronco or a Raider, it won't be a good thing. I know that in some of the things, Shaq Barrett, number 48, was one of those people trying to keep people away from the fight. The best thing is that players should just make a big circle and let the guys just deal with it, and so that it gets over with. But that whole incident was very interesting. The sidelines things, the leaders that I would expect to be there, Brandon Marshall, Shaq Barrett, and others. I now see that number 94 was the big offensive lineman that stuck his arms out and was keeping everybody away from Talib and his difficulty handling his anger. But that's a mental condition, the resiliency and mental toughness. If you are properly mentally conditioned, you'll recover quickly. You'll get it out of your system. Some people, and these are recommendations for what you can do for your mental conditioning. If something gets in you emotionally, yell. Just scream at the top of your lungs and get it out. Get that energy, because it's a spike of energy. And by screaming, big breath, just let it go away from people. Get away from people until you have that emotional surge under control. Once you do, go to people that you trust and that you know will project positivity to you. And the more you prepare for that, the better you're going to be able to manage those situations. So practice becomes practice better or greater than what you expect the game will be. So push yourself in a game. Ask your teammates to get involved with you, your office mates to understand how you're going to handle it. So share with them your goals for handling your balance, or you're transitioning from an emotionally negative place to back to that positive, passionate place. Explain that to people. And that's where goal setting many times falls short. How many of you have created goals? Maybe you have goals right now. You have goals every week. You think about them. But have you communicated them to anybody? So that other people can understand, how do I help him or her? How do I help them stay focused and in control? And when they get out of control, when life gives them kind of a curveball, that they're able to come back away from it and quickly and adjust and deal with it. So that's where the mental conditioning thing really is important. It's our area of focus in surroundings of people and things, being conscientious of those people and things so that you are better prepared. And so in this area of mental conditioning, it's a place where you can reflect back on your goals and say to yourself, gosh, did I accomplish what I wanted? Well, in the Oakland Broncos game, Akib and Crabtree, I would challenge them to, I would challenge in agreement with them that they accomplished their goals. I've been around Mr. Talib, and maybe it was one of his goals to pull off Crabtree's chain. He's that kind of rascal. There's no question. We know he's good, as a defensive back. But he also has this kind of what I call this street kind of sense of humor, where he pushes you, and challenges you to either ignore him and move on and be the better person, or he challenges you to, hey, bring it, bring it. He's fully prepared to bring it back. Now, I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying that's a reality. If I know that, I'll know how to put myself in position to help Aqib get himself back, become resolute, and control what he's doing. And those are conditions of being mental in a mental conditioning area. Now, I want to also point out that as you move forward, and teams that are looking at going on to the next level after the regular season, and right now, because we're 12, 13 games in, we're in week 14 of the NFL season, and we have only a few games left, 4 or 5 games, depending on when your bye week was, left in the season for most teams. They're already starting to predict what are the pairings going to be with the teams that are out there. Now, in some cases, like with a New England 10-2, a Pittsburgh that's 10-2, more than likely than not, along with Philadelphia and Minnesota, who are 10-2, there's not going to be a lot of changes with when they're going to play and where, because there's not enough games left for the people that are the teams that are below them to capture positioning. But just for your food for thought, in Week 14, the NFL has done some predicting. They believe that Miami will be playing New England at Miami this Monday night coming up, and they'll clinch the AFC East division. And the reason they'll clinch it is if New England wins or ties, or Buffalo loses or ties. So then they're going down to Pittsburgh is going to be in the mix, and then Jacksonville. And by the way, this is for the AFC if you haven't already guessed. On the NFC side, it's Philadelphia's in the hunt, Minnesota's in the hunt. Both those teams are 10-2. Los Angeles and New Orleans are definitely in the hunt at 9-3. And then there's all kinds of possibilities after that with regard to Carolina and Green Bay and Dallas. So it's going to be an interesting end of the season. I think there's a lot of teams that have not had themselves under control through the first half of the season. Now we're getting into the beginning of the second half. We're ended by a couple of games, I should say that. We're not going to probably have too many surprises. And yet it could happen. It could happen. As I look at that list and reflect on the mental conditioning side of the game, I would say that you don't want to count out Green Bay because they've got an organization and players. Aaron Rodgers comes back, I believe, this weekend. Now, I find it just almost miraculous how well he's healed and that he's got a doctor's clearance to go out there and throw. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to start. He may still sit back and be a backup just to see how he does with his prep and getting through it. And that's a mental condition as well. He's looking at how well is he thrown. Those are his skills, his movement, flexibility, rotation, strength in that collarbone. And he's feeling pretty good. I can only imagine how antsy he's getting because with today's technology of, the alloys they put in for plates and screws and the sutures they use. I mean, we're bionic in many cases for some of these guys, and they may in fact feel better than they did before the injury. But that being said, those are intangible factors. And the more that we can measure those, the more chances we have in predicting what Green Bay can do. The same thing is true for Dallas and Detroit in their chances of coming through, and maybe even Carolina for that matter, making it happen. Carolina currently is 8-4, so Carolina's got a number of games that they could pull out. If they win against Minnesota, that makes Minnesota 10-3 and them 9-4. So there's still more games to play. So there's still some things that can happen. That could bump out the darlings right now. Minnesota's a big darling. I know Terry Bradshaw was saying he loves the the Miami. I'll get it down here. Minnesota Vikings and what their chances are, but they still have to play it out and finish it for them to take the Central Division title at the NFC, and that's assuming that Philadelphia continues their man rating. There's a great game with them against the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are 9-3, similar to the Minnesota Vikings Carolina situation. So it's going to be very interesting this year or this season. Very, very interesting. So keep an eye on that. That's my kind of my exclamation point for the mental conditioning time in our segment for mental conditioning, because that environment, boy, you get into those environments, even though it's not playoffs yet, the fans know they'll get more ticket sales because of those games, because of the consequences of the win or loss for the teams that are going to be in those games. Great stuff. So we're going to be moving on to our last segment for today on 360 Mindset from 360mindset.com. I'm your host of 360 Performance Talk. Performance Talk, that's what we talk about. It could be sports. It could be sports related to business, business related to sports, or just business. But today's theme is anger versus passion and how that influences your ability to deliver performance. And as our example has been showing behind me during the show, it didn't work so well for Aqib Talib and Mr. Crabtree. They didn't quite keep a handle on their emotions and making sure that they stayed resolute and came through it. It just makes me wonder. So we're in that performance results thing, and they didn't get good results, did they? And then after the game, they were suspended for 2 games. So I wonder what's going to happen when they come back. I said already in just show today, I said Roby should be starting for the rest of the season. Because unless Aqib Talib proves himself in a controlled, resolute way during practice, not going to happen. Now, as I say that, I'm also aware of the business side of this game, and there can be contracts in place that counters the hand of the head coach. We don't know those details, but it could happen. So don't be surprised if Aqib Talib is going to be starting here when he's back on the sidelines and eligible to play. But my vote's for Roby. Roby's done a great job, and he's just as good an athlete and producer of results. He had a pick the other day. He's been great against some tough receivers in the last game, and hopefully he'll get a shot for the rest of the season with more clicks on the clock for him. Performance results is a double-edged sword, because I know people in professional ranks, both business and sports, that they could be just the biggest asshole on the planet in the locker room, and you're thinking, how is that guy focusing on the game? What kind of game is he going to have? And as you say that and they get in the game, it seems that energy, that what we saw on the surface was actually the energy that was amping him up to focus on the game. In fact, it could have been his release valve, like in a steam kettle. Eventually that lid pops and it starts to whistle. And that was just that player whistling. But the water is at the right temperature to brew a great cup of tea. So it's really hard to know on the surface whether that kind of mania in a person manifests itself into manic behavior on the field, or is it that mania is like the valve on the top of the tea kettle? It just pops, the whistle blows, lets some steam off so I can control it, and I go out and I have a great game. I go out and have a great event and perform at my highest. That special services people would say, yeah, we got to do that. We got to blow off some steam so we've got it under control, and we can pop out a 140 beat per minute heart rate so we're at our maximum intake of oxygen and conscious behavior and make the play. Because the failure of special forces, if they don't have it in control, is somebody dies or gets hurt very seriously. So we want to make sure that we're staying true to that system of performance results. So one of those results is breathing. As some would say, keep your eye on the prize. We talked about visualization. If you feel that emotion bubbling up and surging till you can't control it, bring it back into place with breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, make it happen. And understand in your mind when you're creating that vision, what are the outcomes I'm looking for? Not the win, not the trophy, not the score on the board, but what are those success determinants in the process? If I just got so irritated at Crabtree, now I'm facing across the line from him. I controlled it a minute ago when he punched my bud, Chris Harris. but I'm here. I'm going to look at my footwork, make sure my stance is right, get my eye contact up, my hands are ready. I know I'm going to watch for that first step and how I'm going to backpedal and keep it under control. Focus in on those small pieces that if you don't focus on them, you're not going to deliver the results you need to deliver. And if that happens, the anger took control of you. If you do it and it stays in place, the passion for the game, the passion for your execution is on the forethought of your mind, so that you're going to deliver that versus letting the emotions get out of control for you. That's the best example I can show for you right now about performance results and how it can give you the barometer you need to understand, do I have my anger out of control, my negative feelings out of control? I know countless linemen, defensive and offensive linemen, or big men in the paint for basketball, or with baseball, it's usually the catcher. Those who go, the unheralded heroes. It's the people who hit the home runs and make the great play at the center of the field position, shortstop and second base, or the first baseman with the great grab digging it out of the dirt. They're the ones that get the adulations first, because their plays are captured on film. The outfielders, they're standing out there for, well, in most cases, hours on end. It's sometimes a thankless job unless they steal a home run from somebody, and those moments aren't all that frequent that you get those plays to take something away from somebody. So in any case, though, it's keep your eye on the prize and making sure that you have a clear understanding for why positive reinforcement helps you to adapt and adjust. And it's the positive that gives you shelter from the negative thoughts that will pull you down. Because without the positives, you don't see the obstacle coming to you. You don't practice. If you don't start each day with a positive thought, you're not going to be engaged in practice that's going to give you that resolution, that resolve to come back quickly. It's huge. It's a constant feeding of that visioning of how do I use my emotions, actually trying to practice to create anger. We don't have time today for me to go into the strategies of how I can actually help you with understanding how to put your anger, manifest anger during practice through a visioning process and some stimulation, so that you can practice how to control your anger and use that anger energy as a resource for executing challenging tasks. In the defensive lineman world, it's called vertical. Get vertical, which means get your legs moving vertical towards the quarterback to make something happen, to make a play. And many times that's easier said than done. Like most statements from coaches, they're easier said than done. But it's extremely important to start that emotion in a positive way, and yet at the same time use the feeling of anger to drive it further, to really move that execution of your skills through an effort that you visualize through the mindset development, and that you get great results at the end. And fight disappointment, because many times you might try something and you say, "Oh, I didn't get as I made it feel good. It looked like I got a lot, but that's not as much as I wanted to." Well, let me tell you something. My grandfather used to tell me this all the time. Look, if you strive for the cherry on top of the sundae and you fall short, whipped cream isn't so bad, because you fall in the whipped cream. So that's not so bad. So if you strive through your practicing to go beyond what you think you want, but you're going to include all the components of what you want are there in that vision, that role playing you're doing in your mind, you're going to fall in the whipped cream. You're going to fall in the whipped cream. Well, when you look at the situation that Woody Hayes punching a kid on the sideline, Bobby Knight throwing a chair across the floor, those were not in control situations. Those were not high resilient actions. Those were emotional actions that were negative, perhaps generated out of anger, and you lose your control of your passion. You disrespect the game you love because of how you're out of control. That's not what you want to do. It's not what you want to do. What I want to do is make sure I recognize the great people at KUHSdenver.com and the wonderful things we do here in challenging the status quo. You can't get better if you don't challenge the status quo. You can't execute a particular task over and over again at an optimal level of performance if you don't practice and surround yourself with great people. I'm very fortunate to have great people here at KUHSdenver.com. You're listening to, in fact, 360 Performance Talk. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman, and we've been talking about anger versus passion and how you control those emotions so that you can maximize the delivery of the positive performance that you want. Before I end the day today, I also want to remind you again of the new show that's coming today. Today's its maiden voyage, Measure Up, a look at power and privilege between gender and the identity of men and women, and how there are certain signs and characteristics of when it's not going well, where power is being abused and privilege is being diminished. Everyone is entitled to possessing their own measure of power and privilege. It's when there's a conflict that someone thinks, I want your power. I want to take away your power and your privilege and make it my own. And too often in our world, in gender relations with men and women, or men and men, or women and women, one of the parts of that combination, that pairing, desires more power and privilege, and they want to take advantage of the other. In the very negative sense, there's predators out there. We're going to present some interesting statistics today about the realities that men need to be aware of so that they measure up and they become positive and adapt and adjust their negative behavior between themselves and another gender or the same gender. Our show is not going to be sensitive to, we actually are going to be sensitive. We're going to be inclusive with all orientations, viewpoints, or circumstances. We're not going to ignore them. The show's goal is to educate and move negative outcomes and failures to positive places of improvement that challenge the status quo. We've been letting things go for too long, and it's regretful that we've had to, it's taken the examples at high levels to give us an awareness and a sensitivity to difficult situations that have been going on for a lot of years between men and women, and the abuses and harassments that they've had to face because of it. But that's going to be great. We're going to have a great show. We want input. Please get on the website, KUHSdenver.com, and tune in, and then listen very carefully to how we want you to participate. Send us your tweets to my Twitter account, @CoachLKW, for both 360 Performance Talk and for the new show coming up today at 3 o'clock, Measure Up. And we're going to share some truths regarding social behavior between the sexes. I said the sex word. Sexes. Yes, we are. Well, that's going to be a great show today. Okay, so in closing today, we're in our closing minutes for today's show at 360 Performance Talk. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman at KUHSdenver.com. It's the holiday season. I want to make sure that we send out great holiday wishes and messages to everybody out there in our listening world, and the world is what we have here. In fact, I want to make sure that I say hello to my international viewers out there. We've got some great ones today from Romania, the Netherlands. This is a new one, Portugal. Santo Tirso in Portugal. We've got some listeners in Berlin. Guten Tag in Berlin. Bemidji in the United States. I'm hoping it's Bemidji, Minnesota, because I've been in Bemidji. If it's Bemidji, Minnesota, I've been there. I love that. That was a great time when I was a kid. And then Edmonton, Canada. My connects to, hey, take off there, you hoser, in Canada. Love it. Love it. Love it. That's KUHS Denver, people. Great reach of our message out there. We're challenging the status quo. I know I am, and I believe that for everybody out there. So I want to say adios for today. Have a great day and a happy holiday. I hope you're excited about the future, and make sure that every time you're out there, you're breathing. You're taking the time to take a breath. This is Lowell Whiteman, your host of 360 Performance Talk on KUHSdenver.com. Listen and enjoy as we say goodbye for today. Thanks for viewing, guys. Have a great day out there wherever you are. Be safe. Tune in at 3 if you can, 3 o'clock Mountain Standard Time for our new show, Measure Up. Excited about that.